So first things first, go to Preferences, Gizmo, and select Local Coordinate. This is just going to make it a lot easier to move the pattern pieces around in the 3D workspace. Now if you check the description of the top comment, I've provided a link to this project file. So I'm going to go to File, Open Project, and in that folder there's a project file. So I'll just click on Open, and it's going to load in a 3D character, which is a Dash Genesis 3 male. So there we go, project is open and we are good to go. Now it's time to import our face mask sewing pattern. So if I hold on my left mouse button over here and select rectangle and then just left click, it's going to bring up this dialog box. Just click on OK and it's just going to draw out that rectangle pattern piece for us, and this is what we're going to use as our reference. So under Object Browser and Fabric, make sure you've got Fabric 1 selected, then nearby Texture, click on these 4 dots, and in that folder you can see that there's a face mask sewing pattern. So click on Open and it loads it into Marvelous Designer. Now we need to scale up this pattern. So go to this Edit Pattern icon and left click this to make sure it's selected. Now I just need to drag diagonally over here and it's going to scale it up. So now you can see on this image there's a silhouette of this character, which is actually the 3D character from the project file where I created the face mask. And then we can see the silhouette in the background here as well, which is the silhouette for our actual 3D character. So I'm going to try my best to just scale this up to match the proportions. It doesn't need to be exactly the same size. I'll just move this to the left just to eyeball this. But the reason why I'm doing that from the beginning is because if this face mask pattern is too small, then obviously the face mask is going to be way too small on our character's head. So maybe just scale it up just a little bit more. And that should be fine. Alright, those proportions look almost the same. And that's good to go. So it's time to start tracing our pattern. So under Object Browser and Fabric, click on Add, double click over here and just call this face mask. So I'll say face mask fabric 1 and press enter. I'm going to change the color to a darker gray, and then because we're going to be tracing over this image, I'm actually going to go to opacity and reduce the opacity a little bit so that I can see when I'm tracing, but I also want to see this image underneath. So now over here on this icon, hold on the left mouse button and select polygon, and we can actually start tracing on this image. So before I start tracing, I'm also going to select this fabric, which is our reference image, and bring down the opacity on here as well. Or else this is just going to be way too dark. Now make sure you go back and select face mask fabric. Now over here, just hold on your left mouse button, select polygon, and polygon we're going to be placing dots to create this pattern. So whenever I'm drafting a pattern, I'll never add curvature while I'm drafting the pattern. I'll always add the curvature afterwards. So let's trace and create this first pattern. So I'm going to put my first dot here, another one here, another one here, here, and then just click over here to complete the pattern, and that's going to create our first pattern piece for our face mask. Right, let me go back and select face mask and just decrease the opacity, just so I can see this a lot better and I can see the underlying pattern. Right, so now in order to create this curvature, we're going to use a feature over here called Edit Curvature. So I'm going to start by creating this curvature first. So just click and drag down to create curvature. There's some curvature over here as well, and some curvature on the bottom. Now to create this curvature, it's the exact same principle, right? Just drag this out, and there we go. But now the difference is I'm going to go back to Edit Pattern, and you'll see as soon as I click on Edit Pattern that we get these blue anchor points. There's one at the bottom and one at the top. So when I click on this, I can refine the shape a lot easier. So a general rule of thumb is to always do curvature afterwards. If you try and add curvature while you're drafting the pattern, you're just going to give yourself a headache. This is just a lot better, in my opinion, and this just gives you much better control. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this add point, and I'm going to add a point right over here. Now this region is the bridge of the nose. So now if I go back to my edit pattern and I select this line, you can see this line has its own anchor point as well. So if I need to adjust this, if I want to make it straighter, or just adjust the shape of the bridge of the nose region, I can do that. So I'm just giving myself that possibility. Okay, so once that's done, go to transform pattern, left click over here to select the pattern, then right click and go to symmetric pattern with sewing. So this creates a duplicate. As soon as I left click, I place that down, and the reason why I did symmetric pattern with sewing if I go back to edit pattern and select one of these points, whatever I do on this side will happen on that side. So it's just saving you some time. All right, now I'm just going to undo that. All right, so that was the hardest pattern to draft. The rest of these are just rectangles. So I'm just going to go over here, hold on the left mouse button, go to rectangle, and let's draw out this piece first. All right, and then I'm just going to press Ctrl C, Ctrl V, duplicate that. So this one is a little bit shorter, but it's a bit longer, just like that. Then Ctrl C, Ctrl V. All right, so we got these pieces, and now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click and go to symmetric pattern with sewing. So that creates a piece on the other side. And for these pieces, symmetric pattern with sewing. Whoa. Symmetric pattern with sewing, there we go, and just place that down. Right, so we got all our pieces ready. Now I'm going to select the reference image over here because you can still see it in our 3D workspace. Just bring this forward. Right, you can see I'll left click over here to select it. If your gizmo disappears for some reason, like that, you can see I selected this but I don't see a gizmo. Just left click again and the gizmo will reappear. Right, so bring that forward, and then I'm going to right click, go to freeze, and I'm going to go to hide 3D pattern. So this pattern piece won't move when we actually simulate that. And I'm just going to move this to the right. And there we go, we got our face mask. I'll select the face mask fabric and bring the opacity all the way back up. Now since this is a very simple, garment, and it's such a small garment on the character, I'm going to select everything right now. And you can see the particle distance is on 20. So I advise you to actually bring this down to 10 right now because, like I said, it's a simple garment. Your PC should be able to handle this on 10. I can bring this all the way down to 5 and still work on it. But yeah, you should still be fine on 10. Now you can see I still got everything selected, and in my 3D workspace, I'm just going to move this closer to our character's face. Okay, so before we start rotating these pieces in place, go back to the face mask fabric, make sure it's selected, then scroll down here to physical property. Now, if you click on this folder icon, within this folder, the tutorial folder, I've actually provided a fabric preset. It's called Denim Lightweight, but in later versions of Marvelous Designer, it's actually included with the program. It's over here called Denim Lightweight, but I did include it in that folder. So you would just go to the folder and then click on open, and you'll be loading in the Denim Lightweight. So that's what I'm going to be using for the face mask. I feel like this physical property works pretty well for this face mask. Now it's time to start positioning these pieces. So let's position these first. So this is the left side of the mask. So just rotate it like that. And now you can see with the local coordinate gizmo, it's just a lot easier to move these pattern pieces. And remember, if the gizmo disappears, just left click again and it will bring it back. Alright, so this piece over here, I'm going to rotate it like this and push this back. Now over here, I also want to make sure I'm on thin textured surface, and the reason why I'm doing that is because you can see darker regions on this pattern. These should always be facing the character because that's the normal. If you have a dark piece on the outside, you can simply just right click and you can go to flip normal. Okay, now I'm pushing this back. This is going to be positioned over here. Do the same for the other side. Okay, and now these pieces, I'm going to select both of them, rotate them like this, rotate it like that. And these ones are going to be over here by the ear. Well, make sure that is selected. This is here by the ear. One of them on top, the other one underneath. It's just going to make it easier, you'll see, once this is being sewed. I'm also just going to bring this forward a little bit and move that up. So understanding the logic of sewing this, if you've used MD, you should already get a general idea of how this is going to be sewed. I move that here, and then just position these pieces on the other side as well. So rotate it like that, this way, and move this back. So one piece on the bottom and the other piece on the top. And just move this up and bring that forward. Okay. If you're using earlier versions of MD, you just need to right click and go to show line length. But in MD10, you go to this icon and select this, because now it brings up these numbers. And this is important because now I need to look at the exact width of these straps. This value over here, the width, 7.1, because I'm going to be creating a point on this pattern over here that's going to be exactly 7.1, because that's where it's going to be sewed onto. So I need to go to add point. Now when I hover over this line, make sure nothing else is selected in your scene. Just hover over this line, right click, it brings up split line. Then here by line 1, just type in 7,1 and press OK. Now at the bottom, do the exact same thing. So hover over this line, right click, and then 7,1 and press OK. Now since we set up symmetric pattern with sewing, it also put the dots on the pattern on the other side. So now all I need to do is I'll go to segment sewing, and I'm going to sew in the 3D workspace, but you can see what's happening over here. So I'm sewing this piece onto this piece. Oh, let me just move this forward a little bit. So I'm sewing this onto this, and this onto this. Oops. By the way, if you get a twisted line like this, to fix that, just go to edit sewing, right click on this line and go to reverse sewing. Okay, and now I'm sewing this piece onto that part of the garment, and over here in the front, these two pieces are being sewed together. Now you can see it doesn't complete this entire region. So if I wanted to, I could create another sewing segment over here at the top. But if I go to edit sewing, and over here, if I just click and drag this up to the top, I'm extending my sewing region. You can see now the entire region is just being sewn with one segment. Right, and again, since we set up symmetric pattern with sewing, I don't need to do any sewing on the other side. So the last pieces that need to be sewed together, I need to sew this end to this end, and that's going to create this loop over here around the ear. Okay, so this is really important because working with face gear and face masks can be extremely wonky and very frustrating. So if I simulate this right now, there's a very high chance that this is just going to fall off the character's face. So to make sure I'm keeping at least a part of this garment in place, I want to use pins. So this is the pin box, and this makes sure that it basically holds a part of a garment in place and prevents it from falling down. So I'm going to pin this region on the mask, and I want to make sure I'm doing it on the other side as well. So I know for a fact that this region is not going to fall off my character, but this is still going to simulate. That should still sew on there, and everything else should simulate correctly. Right, so I'm good to go. I just need to press spacebar, and there we go. So let me just move this down, and you can see that pin held this in place, and it really came in handy. Now it's just a matter of, helping this down. But you can already see we've got a face mask. But without those pins, like I said, there was a really high possibility that this was just going to fall off the character. Alright, there we go. And now it's just a matter of editing this further. But yep, there we've got our face mask. Okay, so on my computer, I can actually bring this face mask down to 5. So I'm going to select everything, go to my particle distance and put this on 5, just so I can see the garment a lot better and see some additional folds. Now, if this is making your PC run slow, then obviously just stay at a particle distance of 10, but it's a small garment, so it should work on 5. Now I'll just press simulate. Now I can see a lot more folds over here on the front of the face. Okay, so let's do some further adjusting. I want to show you how to create some additional bunching on this region and how to generate more folds over here, which is also going to make, this part of the garment pull a lot tighter, and it's going to create some tension over here. Okay, so I personally don't like how this region looks. It's very flat, and I want to generate some tension here as well and some additional folds. So the easiest way to do that, select these two pieces, so hold on shift to select the other piece as well, and then just enable elastic in the property editor. So you can see that creates some tension. It's basically pulling this down, so it's pulling this region up and pulling this region down, and that's creating this really awesome tension over here. Now on the ratio, if I decrease this, I can make it even more tense. Right, but I'm going to increase that a little bit, but I do want some tension over here. So I'm just going to see what value I want to work with. Okay, so I can always adjust this value, but there we go. I did want to create some elastic and tension over there. Now I'm going to do the same for our mask region as well, and that's going to also generate some additional folds. So select both pieces, go to elastic, and now you can see what's happening over here. Because I enable elastic, it actually pulls, it's like pulling these pieces forward, which is actually making it a little bit tighter around the ear. So it's pulling this forward, and that's generating some additional folds on the mask over here. Now for the ratio, I'm just going to increase this. I don't want too much tension, but just another great way, to create some more, folds on here. But it depends what type of face mask you're going for. Maybe you don't want too much fabric on this region. Then the alternative would be, you could try a different face preset. Sorry, listen to me, face preset. A different physical property preset. Something like trim hardware is a very rigid material, so you won't have as many folds. But I like this denim lightweight. The overall aesthetic that it gives me kind of looks like a cloth mask. Right, or you can even use cotton. But there we go. So it's created some additional tension just by enabling the elastic. Okay, so I did go ahead with these two pieces and I brought down the strength to 2.3. So there's still some elasticity, but I don't want too much because there's too much elasticity over here. It's generating way too many folds and I'm just losing that overall aesthetic with all of this tension. I prefer to have more of this tension visible than having, way too many pieces of fabric and folds on this region. Just for me personally, I don't think it looks aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so we got a nice shape going on over here, especially with the bridge of the nose. This face mask is sitting on our character pretty nice. Now if you wanted to change the shape with the angle over here, you simply just need to change the angle of this line. So you could use edit curvature, you could make that straighter. It's completely up to you. Okay. Right, so I actually want some thickness on this garment because right now this is completely flat, right? There's no indication of any thickness. So I'm just going to hover over here and select this icon, which is thick textured surface. And now I'm going to select this entire pattern. Okay, go to my transform pattern, hold down shift, and I just want to deselect these two pieces. So everything over here, and on the right hand side, you can see we have an add thickness slider. I'm going to put this on 2. So by default, it's on 0. So I'm going to put that on 2, and it's going to add some additional thickness over here. And you can see that immediately we have some thickness. Now I'm going to go back, hold down shift, select these pieces, and I'm going to put this value on 1. So I don't want it to be as thick as that. Just a nice offset with thickness on those two different regions. Okay. So let's go ahead to our fabric, select this and just copy it. And I'll call this, because this one was fabric 1, I'll just call this fabric 2. And now all of these pieces, I'll just hold on shift. And I'm going to change this to fabric 2. Now I'll select my fabric 1 and I'm going to make my fabric 1 maybe a bit darker. Now you can use whatever colors you want, it's up to you. So let's add some more detail onto the face mask. On this region over here, I want like a additional strip of detail that's going to be this lighter gray. So to do that, I go to edit pattern, select this line, right click and go to offset as internal line. So this is going to create an internal line over here, a red line that I'm basically going to be cutting off and sewing back on. So I'm going to do that at a distance of 5. Make sure extend is on and click on OK. Now make sure you've got this enabled so you can see this red line. Select the red line, right click and go to cut and sew. So this cuts this piece off but sews it back on. Now this piece, I'm going to make sure I'm holding down shift to select both. I'm going to put this one's thickness on 2 so it matches these other pieces, and I'm going to change this to face mask fabric 2. So now I have this nice detail here at the top of the face mask, and just press simulate to make sure everything's working. Alright, just some nice additional detail for our face mask. So I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom as well. So select these lines, Right click, offset internal line at 5, extend it, okay. That line should automatically be selected right now. Right click, cut and sew. Select these pieces, put it on 2. Actually, I'm wondering if that's too thick. Is that too thick? Undo. No, it looks fine. But if you want to, you don't have to go 5 millimeters. You can go with 3 millimeters. It's up to you. However you want to design this, you have that freedom. Now it's just a matter of positioning this, and you can see this face mask is already taken shape. But by having this on a particle distance of 5, I'm really seeing all of these folds. Just looks so much better. And just, you know, pushing and pulling, helping it into place, doing what I need to do to get it to look really cool on my character. Now just some additional tips. If for some reason you guys don't like the fabric in the front, you know, it's like this, there's almost like this indentation with fabric. There's 2 ways to fix this. You can either fix this directly on this pattern by making this straighter. And by making this straighter, you're going to make it tighter on this part of the character's face. So you can see that's a lot more form-fitting. And that gets rid of all of that loose hanging fabric. Or I'm going to undo that. Remember, we applied the elastic fabric to both of these regions. If I just select these lines over here and remove elastic just on those lines, you'll see that it gets rid of that fabric in the front. Maybe this looks a lot better for you. I actually think that looks really nice as well. Maybe with no elastic here on the front. But it depends. It really depends what style of face mask you're actually going for. Alright. So now if you wanted to style like these straps a lot better, because right now it's just using a pin, you can do that, but just make sure that you create a pin on this part of the character, because I don't want this to fall down, right? Now I can go back to these areas. While I still have pin box selected, right click and delete selected pin, and do this for one piece at a time. So you can see this is already falling off the character's ear. So now I just need to help it back into place. And maybe I can help with the styling a little bit. So one way that you can, you know, try your best to tame stuff like areas like this from falling off the character, let me show you how to do that. So you would select your character like this. In the object browser, you'd go to scene and select your OBJ. In MD10, I have to select a face, then right click and go to select all faces. Now on the right, we have something called kinetic friction. By default, this is actually on 0.05, right? So this would be extremely wonky and just falling off the character's face immediately. But if you increase that value over here, if you increase that to something like 1, it tries its best to hold it in place with the overall friction. So it's just one way of trying to tame this region. So now you can see why I put those pins in the beginning, right? Now if I want to, I could also select this. Like if I'm having a really hard time positioning that, just select it like that and then simulate. Just help it. So maybe that looks better. So now, since I'm not going to move it, I'll pin it in place, and then I'm going to make sure I'm pinning it over here. I want to pin this area here by the ear. Yep, there we go. Now I'll just style the other side, but I just wanted to show you some tips and tricks for styling this part of the face mask. I know it can be finicky, and now you can see this looks way better than this side, because this was just a random pin holding it in place when we simulated it. So the shape over here looks way better, and I showed you how you can do that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just alter the design a little bit. I feel like there's maybe too much thickness on this mask. So I'm going to select all of these, hold on shift to deselect these. And this value, I'm going to, instead of 2, I'm going to put on 1. And then for these pieces, I'm going to put this on 0.5. Just like that. So I'm also going to alter the overall width of this pattern piece over here. I feel like it's just too wide because we have this consistency with the width over here and on this strap. So I just want to make this a bit shorter. So I go to this pattern piece, double click on the center dot, and the dots will turn orange. That means I'm doing a uniform scale. So I'm going to bring this closer to 7.1 and just make it a bit shorter. Let's see, 7.6. No, it's 7.3 is fine. Simulate that. Now it's shorter. And I'm also going to select these pieces. And remember, they have some elasticity applied. I'm just going to increase that ratio a little bit, just so it's not generating too many folds. But I still want the tension on there. Alright, there we go. And now is the last adjustment on this face mask. It's going to make it a little bit more form-fitting, but just be careful how you use this because you can make it extremely tight on the character's face. But these straps over here, I'm going to select all of them holding down shift, and I'm going to actually apply some elasticity on here. So as soon as I do that, it starts pulling it really tight against the face, and it creates this rounded region over here. But look at how form-fitting this has become. So I want to make sure I'm going to the strength and just decreasing that. So let me bring that all the way to 0.1. And let's see, I don't want too much strength. Maybe, let's say, maybe I'll put this on 2. I'm going to put that on a value of 2 and see how that looks. Now it's created this nice rounded shape over here, and that's because of the tension and the fact that this is being pulled back on the face. You can see it's a lot more form-fitting now. If you feel like this is too tight, then you can always just select these straps and adjust the strength. I'm actually going to put this on 1.5, or maybe just on 1. Let's see, maybe I'll just leave that value on 1. So I do want some tension pulling on these straps, but not too much. And it's definitely made it a lot more form-fitting on our character's face, as you can see. Now over here, you can see we got this line down the center. If you don't want that line to be visible, you can always select these points and just enable elasticity on there again. And it's just going to add some more wrinkles and folds in that region while still retaining some of the form-fitting aesthetic. Alright, so there we go. Those pins are really coming in handy on these ears. Now, I personally like the fact that, you know, parts of this fabric is folding over itself. I think it looks a bit more realistic instead of it being a perfect shape over here around the ear. All of this irregularity with the way it's folding, in my opinion, looks more believable. But yeah, there we go. We've got our face mask. And again, if you feel like this is too tight on the character, just select these straps and you can disable elasticity entirely. And it'll bring back some more loose fabric on this part of the mask. But I did want it to be just a little bit more form-fitting. Right, so at this point we are done with our face mask, so congratulations. I'm gonna go to my pins over here. I still have some pins on this part of the character's nose. So just make sure you selecting that left mouse button, then right click and delete selected pin. And now let me just move that a little bit more freely. Right, and we'll also fix any, maybe if there's simulation issues over here by the nose. So just adjusting the shape on the bridge of the nose. But the mask itself is done. We've created it. You could see it wasn't that difficult. Just I know this can be a little bit of a nightmare to work with, but that's why we have pins in the program, because they really help a lot. So just go ahead, save this as a project file. Hopefully you've been saving, like doing incremental saves throughout the project. But save this as your project file because now you've officially created your mask. So we are done, but just as a bonus, and this is completely optional, and it's only available in Marvelous Designer 10, by the way, you can actually bring in substance materials directly into Marvelous Designer. So if I wanted to apply a fabric material on here and see what it looks like, it's really easy to do that. So if you head on over to Substance Source and sign in and go to free assets, they have what is it, 56 materials that you can choose. There's quite a small selection of fabric materials, but I downloaded this one over here called Jersey Stitch. And if I go back to MD, let's say I want to apply that Jersey Stitch to this pattern. Now you can see we've already created our fabric over here. So select that, and then by material, you want to change this from PBR to substance, and then click on these 4 dots, and I'm going to load in the SPSAR file. So that's what gets downloaded from substance source. Click on open, and what's awesome about these files is that they are customizable. So this one even has some transparency. You can see the 3D character underneath. So if I go to channels, I'm actually going to disable the opacity and the metallic, and I'm going to decrease some of the reflection index. And I can also change the yarn color, and it's just cool. I get to see, you know, my face mask with some fabric materials on it. You can also change the resolution to 4K. And over here I can change how it tiles, because all of these materials are tileable, maybe 250 by 250. And there we go. So now I can see what my face mask looks like with a fabric material. So you can get that from substance source, but if you are looking for some more fabric materials, I have created a complete package with fabric materials. This is on my Gumroad page. You can search for Travis David's Gumroad. It's 56 fabric materials. They are at 4K resolution. They are completely tileable as well, and there's just a wide selection over here for you to use with your t-shirts, with your face masks, with blankets, pillows, whatever you can think of that involves fabric. I've created all of these materials for you, but I just wanted to show you that you can bring substance materials into Marvelous Designer with Marvelous Designer 10. And now some last minute preparation. Let's say you've brought materials into MD, whether it's my materials or substance materials, and you want to export this out as an OBJ. This is what I usually do. I'll select my entire pattern, bring my particle distance down to 5. Now this is a simple garment, so even on 5, it is definitely generating some more detail, but you can actually bring that down to 3. Especially with this garment, you should be able to go to 3 without any issues. And then once it's on a low particle distance, that's good to go. Now we don't need this anymore in our scene. We just use this for tracing the pattern, so I can select that and delete it. And I also want to make sure with the fabric, I'm also deleting that fabric because we don't need that anymore. And then I'll also go to my UV editor. I'll right click, go to reset UV to 2D arrangement. And now I think in MD10 you have this option, put all UV to 01. Otherwise you need to manually pack this into one UV tile. So if I click on that, it automatically packs it into a tile. I can also put these pattern pieces into individual tiles to create UDIMs and scale that up a lot larger, which is going to increase the textile density, and that just means you'll get better, higher quality looking materials. And I'll go back to simulation, and then I would select everything, go to context menu, 3D garment, and quadrangulate this to put it into quads. And then once that's done, you can select your entire pattern. Go to File, Export OBJ selected. Now I'm not taking this over to ZBrush, like this is the final garment. So I'll just save it as an OBJ. And select all patterns, multiple objects, and thickness, because we apply thickness in MD. If I was going to ZBrush, I would do that thin and create the thickness in ZBrush, but like I said, there's no ZBrush involved. I definitely want unified UV coordinates with the diffuse map and the normal map. And you can choose a resolution for the images. If you want it at 4K, then it's 496. My scale is in centimeters DAS and at 100%. Save with absolute texture. And I'll click on OK. And then I am done. And I've created a face mask from start to finish in Marvelous Designer. So that's the end of the tutorial. If you made it this far, congratulations. You know how to create a face mask. You can see it wasn't that difficult. Just the hardest part is these ears. Because you're going to have a lot of problems here. This can be falling off the ears, but as long as you use pins, you are good to go. So I hope you learned something useful from this. Let me know what you think down in the description below. And as always, I truly appreciate the support on this channel. You guys are super awesome. Stay tuned for some more videos and tutorials, and goodbye.